Seriously? Of course that's totally broken. Of course! I fix everything and then it starts with something totally broken over there. What the heck is this thing? That's not showing up. Where is that? Oh yes, now it's going to do that as well. Ah, whatever, I'll fix it. Look at that dude's face. That's not even the window that I want. OBS! One day, I don't know how it works, man. But let me fix this right quick, and then we're going to get going with Kerbal Boot Camp. Yes, there I am, but apparently this, whatever side it's on of me, is busted. It always busts. Every single day that busts. Ay, 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 ay. Where is that at? That is going to be the BTTV chat. And I need to go into there, and I need to go into there. It always loses the freaking window. I mean, there is the window right there. I didn't close the window at all. Ay, 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 ay. One of these days. One of these days. So now, how do I fix it is the problem. Nope. Yes, it's one of the bugs where it never shows up again. Well, now I just have to close that window, then it's going to totally break. So the only way to fix it is to get rid of that. Yes. And then add it back. Yeah. So everybody that's coming in, people are going to be coming into Kerbal Boot Camp here. Yeah, boot camp. Good. There we go. There's that at least. All right. Except I don't want it on that side. I want it on this side. Wow, I really need to fix those. I think it's just a scene we're in. In space, it looks better, I think. Doesn't it? Dude, Bobcam, I got so fed up with the asteroid thing. It was just bugged out the wazoo. I think a combination of using the claw and having 64 going at the same time was just not a recipe for success. Dude, explodey goodness! Thanks for the follow. Welcome to Boot Camp. You said you've been watching for a while and just made an account. That's awesome to make a Twitch account just to watch Boot Camp. That's freaking awesome. But, dude, Bobcam, it was no bueno, man. It was definitely no bueno. So, let me get off that. That was just a keyframe. This is not the greatest ship in the world. This is just a keyframe. You like that? I just made that up myself. Alrighty. Fly back to vehicle assembly. That's good. This is good. That stuff's good. That's good. The camera's good. I'm good. Y'all want to know how serious boot camp is? Boot camp is serious business. That's how serious boot camp is. Oh, brother. We'll get to Dr. Pepper in just a minute, but that's how we're going to kick this thing off. Let's see here. We got that, we got that, we got that. So here's what we're going to be doing. Where's my craft even at? There it is. I've got this idea, right? And this idea is that Kerbal Space Program is a freaking awesome game. But it's a little intimidating, right? It's like, oh my gosh, look at all these crazy things that people are doing. How am I going to do that? I can't get to orbit, yada, yada, yada. In fact, my little brother, who is currently returning from getting a pizza, I should really stop saying little, because he's not that little. He's actually bigger than me, just a little younger. My younger brother just got Kerbal Space Program yesterday and has been working on getting to the moon. Apparently, he's had a couple successful impact experiments, but has not actually landed on the moon. And so he was hanging out with us in the stream yesterday when we were going over some concepts like the lifter design, and we did some Kerbal Engineer. We did some RCS Build Aid. We did a bunch of different things. And I got to thinking, I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we did kind of an extended stream that got you from I've never played this game before all the way up to a moon landing, an SSTO, or a space station, something like that. And I think maybe there's 3 different boot camps. There's like SSTO boot camp, there's moon landing or lander boot camp, and then there's space station boot camp. I'm going to see. I'm going to play it by ear, and I'm going to see if I can fit a station into this or vice versa, something like that. We shall see. But what we're doing today, I'm going to do an extended stream. I'm starting early. Y'all know I normally start at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's currently 5:30 Eastern time. And I'm going to call this Kerbal Boot Camp. We're going to start at the very beginning, which is I've never been able to get a rocket to space before. And we're going to get this session all the way up to the moon landing. So I'm going to cover getting to orbit, rendezvous and docking, transferring to the moon, lander design and piloting, landing on the moon, and then from there we're going to see how much time we have left over. We may do farming some science on Minimus. We may do making a space station or docking with a space station or something like that. But the entire point of this stream is that it's going to be an extended stream, longer than a normal Kerbal Space Academy session. Starting at 5:30, go until we get to the moon, then going on to space stations or something like that. And the point will be, if you've never been able to do this before, hopefully by the end of watching this stream, you'll be able to get your own craft on the moon at the very least, if not further. So that is the idea here. Kerbal Boot Camp. I've never played Kerbal Space. Well, I mean, I have, clearly. But you've never played Kerbal Space Camp. I can't even talk. Gotta have the caffeine sometime to kick in. I've never gotten my rocket into orbit. I've never been able to rendezvous with something. I've never been able to do anything. Crazed 77, man, I know you gotta go. It's gonna be recorded, so you can watch it after the fact if you want to get caught up. Plus, we're gonna be going for a while, so if you can come in kind of halfway or near the end or something whenever you're available. And I am planning on doing this on a regular basis. If it works out well, if people enjoy it, if they get a lot out of it, I think we'll be doing boot camps. It may be like a weekend thing. And maybe normally we'd start a little bit earlier, like maybe 2 p.m., and we'd go from 2 till 10 and have like an 8-hour boot camp or something. And if you can watch it, you can watch it. And if you only get a couple things, I'll get it on YouTube for you. That's actually a good idea, Crazed. So, that is the concept here today. This is Kerbal Boot Camp. We're going to go from 0 to the moon, basically. And if you're new to my stream, I know I do this spiel every time, and some people are like, dude, I always hear the spiel, Valdez. And I was like, dude, there are some people who it may be the first time for. If you're new to my stream, I am Das Valdez. I run Kerbal Space Academy. This is Kerbal Boot Camp. The entire concept of my streams is that I'm here live playing Kerbal Space Academy. Playing Kerbal Space. I'm just going to change the name of the game. Playing Kerbal Space Program. I'm not here to show off how awesome I am. I'm not here to do crazy, wacky things, although I do some crazy, wacky things sometimes. I am here to go over some basic concepts and advanced concepts in Kerbal Space Program and answer questions for you. So if I'm doing something and I'm going a little bit fast, you didn't quite get something, you had a question about an engine I'm using or why I did something a certain way. Why did I turn that part? Why did I fly it that way? Why did I click there? You can ask me in the chat. That's the entire freaking point here. The entire point is I'm live, and as you ask me questions in the chat, something you didn't get, something you want more information on, something that's completely not related, you can ask me the question, and I will answer it in the chat, or I will use the game. It'll be like, Das, why do you need 3 landing legs? Why can't you do it with 2? And I'll be like, well, here's why you can't use 2, because if I do 2, and I launch it, Jeopardy music while the scene changes. That's not Jeopardy. I'll say, well, that's a good question, but here's what happens if you only have 2 landing legs. Your craft falls over. That's not good for crafts. Anyways, that's the concept. Das Valdez. There's a couple different ways to get my attention. As you may have seen in the chat already with Crazed, the last comment there, if you say the word Das, D-A-S in chat, it will highlight it in red. That will get me to look at it. I might not look at it right away. I may be crashing something. I may be flying something. I may be burning a node or something like that. Thank you, Dave, for your insightful and interesting comment on the situation of why I can't use 2 landing legs. Anyways, if you say Das, D-A-S in chat like this, D-A-S, it'll actually highlight it in red unless I say it, apparently. Just like Cray77's there. That'll make me look at it. Periodically, when I'm getting a scene change, when I'm time warping or something like that, I'll look over at the chat, I'll scroll back up, and I'll try to answer all the questions that came through in red. You can also say the word question like this. Question. That'll also highlight it red, but not whenever I do it. It'll highlight it in red, so you can say, Das, I have a question. Or you can say question, or question with a colon, or whatever, and it'll highlight it in red. And I will scroll back, see how the chat is scrolling. I'll scroll back and I say, hey, look at this. Explodey Goodness has been watching my stream for about a week. I didn't get the asteroid. I think I already answered that. But I'll scroll back and I'll answer those things. That is the entire point. Thanks, Caboose, by the way. That is how it works. QWERTYBO also. How's it going? About getting ready to start up Kerbal Boot Camp here. I've already talked about Kerbal Boot Camp for 10 minutes. And we actually need to start booting some camps or whatever it is you do. So, with that being said, Step 1, Kerbal Boot Camp. Step 2, I'm Das Valdez. Step 3, ask questions. That's the entire point. So that I can help you get your own craft to the moon. Or something. I mean, wherever you want to go. It doesn't have to be the moon. Let's go back to the vehicle assembly. And I am planning on spending about an hour on the first topic, which is getting into orbit for the first time. Let me see here. Let me see. By the way, let me do a roll call right quick. I got so many regulars. I love it when the regulars show up. I actually have to click on this, and then I can do the roll call. Adel, awesome. Probably just idling. Caboose, you've been here. Sithily, I talked to earlier. Craze said you have to go, but that's all good. Daff07, don't remember your name, but welcome to Kerbal Bootcamp. Dave is here. Explodey Goodness, you've been lurking for a while. Thanks for joining. Lam the Man, I think that's also I am the man. Lilu, I saw your question. I'll get back to it. Mellow Red, I remember you. Quartybo, Steel Mage, Teddy Boogie, Teddy Boggle 68. Cool. TG Ame. It's pronounced AIM, he says. The Shade, 00117, and Zephos Lennox. Everybody who's here, thanks for joining Kerbal Spoke Camp, where I can't talk. Kerbal Bootcamp. That's what we're doing. Also, McLovinit. What's going on, McLovinit? And I think you got me there, Lilu, but I will definitely debug that. I do some stuff where I debug landers and crafts and ships and that sort of stuff, but I'm going to do that off of Kerbal Bootcamp. Catch me during a free play or something like that, and I totally will download a craft file, help you debug it, explain what I'm doing to fix it. That is another thing that we do here at Kerbal Space Academy. Let's see here. So yeah, get me that sometimes, and while we're doing a free play, I will totally debug that for you. Hi from Russia. Dude, Daff, that's awesome. Hi from Russia. I don't know if I've ever had anybody from Russia. Let's make sure that Nightbot is running. Nightbot. Nope, she no working. Shade. Let me tell you who knows if Das got the asteroid last night. Me. Did not get the asteroid. We ran into way too many freaking bugs. By the end of there were things sticking in space. They were becoming frozen. Ships were just magically exploding. It totally was not working. And I ran out of time. I needed to get some rest. So I've got that save saved. I'm going to get that asteroid. California, Massachusetts. Actually, that's a good idea. Toss in your location in the chat. It's interesting to see where everybody comes from. The first and last words out of your filthy holes will be, sir. I don't think I'd make a very good bootcamp instructor. But let's see here. I was going to yes, fire up Nightbot. www.nightdev. They only make two things in Texas. Nightdev.com. Seriously, Daff, you're in Moscow? That's freaking awesome. Everybody else, toss your locations in chat because that's freaking cool. Dude, McLovin it, that's fine, man. Don't worry about it. The more you can show up, the better. Show up when you can. That's the whole point. Adam, it's been a while. Pennsylvania we got in there. Nebraska. How exciting, Icebox. Nightbot. There's Nightbot. Ontario, California. That would have totally confused me. There we go. Nightbot. Signing in. Nightbot is online. Indiana, cool. Or you, Nightbot. Alright, and Nightbot. Go! Nightbot's a moderator. Ta-da! You will see Nightbot spam you every now and then with two links. One to my Twitter, which you can follow if you'd like to know when we're doing things like this. And number two, a survey. If you haven't taken the survey before, I'd really appreciate it if you take it. I actually posted the survey up because Daff07, hailing from Russia, I didn't know what to call Russia. There's a special slot on the survey for people from Russia. So I'm going to see. Scotland? Tattyboggle? Dude, Finland? People all over the freaking place. Lignova from Texas, dude. Texas. Oh, I don't have a Texas flag in here. I should do one with the Texas flag. I got a Texas flag hanging in the other room because that's where I'm from originally. But anyways, without further ado, however you say it, all these people from all these cool places, and you're just sitting in Nebraska. I spent some time in Nebraska, honestly. Adam, dude, you freaking send information for the principal to me, and I will have a chat with the principal. I'll tell them about how when I was a freshman I went to the International Science and Engineering Fair, and I'll tell them about how much I enjoy Kerbal Space Program, and I'll tell them that you're enrolled in the Kerbal Space Academy, and I'll tell them that I will also help sponsor you with ideas. So you give me their contact information. I think you should do a Kerbal Space program-based science fair. You let me know what I can do. Levelicious, dude. That's how this stream is starting off. We'll get to the Dr. Pepper. Let's see here. We've got this. We've got that. Chat is good. I am going to... Nightbot's not a real person, right? Alright, I think we've got everybody here. By the way, it's daytime here. I'm in a room with natural light, so I've got some different lighting going on me today. I don't even know what that's... Wow, that looks terrible. That looks better. That's definitely not Dr. Pepper. Really? You can play it at your school? I don't know what Kerala space program is. Is it like Kerbal space program? Or are they blue? I know, Lignova. I got a fridge full of Dr. Pepper. We'll get to that. So much talking. Not very much spacing. Not the evil Red Bull that kills. I do have one thing I need to do. We've got that. We've got that set up. We've got that. We've got that. I've done the intro. I've talked about Kerbal Space Academy. I've talked about asking questions. Dr. Pepper or Riot. I will go. I will go. And I will get a Dr. Pepper in honor of my stream. Because my stream is awesome. I'll go ahead and put this image up. That's not it. I need some help getting this installed as a separate mod. But here's the DP hype. I'm going to put this on the screen. I love this. I'm going to put this on the screen, and I'm going to get this set up as a mod so I can install it. So awesome. Somebody made this for me. In honor of the stream, I'm going to go get an actual Dr. Pepper. When I come back in 1 minute, we're going to get started with Kerbal Boot Camp. What's the new stream? Pizza! I don't have pizza! Dr. Pepper and Tino's Pizza or Riot. I'll be right back. I'll go get a Dr. Pepper in honor of the stream. Because all my regulars are awesome. Vabception. I love it. It is tradition. It is tradition. Let's see here. What was that? Totino's Pizza. DiGiorno Master Race. Dude, McLovin, I actually have a DiGiorno in the fridge right now. Freezer. Only vodka. Just vodka with vodka? I know I need a Dr. Pepper fuel tank. I am totally doing that. There we go. In honor of the stream. The Dr. Pepper. I've also got the Dr. Pepper fuel tank on the screen, which is the awesomest thing ever. I just need to figure out how to install it as a separate mod so I don't overwrite my existing fuel tank. That is what's going on. Ya was the guy who made that for me. Person that made that for me. It's so cool. Now we are back up with the Dr. Pepper. I think we're good to go. Totino's is so bad it's good. You know something? Every now and then, man, you really want a pizza and you just don't care. Let's see here. I don't even understand what that is. McLovin' it. You're the one with the driver's license. You're supposed to buy the alcohol and do the driving, I thought. McLovin' it. From Hawaii. Def, I have no clue what you're saying, man. I can't read that, so I can't respond to this stuff. That isn't the you know, this is the baby can. Yeah, this is the Dr. Pepper can for ants, 7.5 ounce. My typical dosage. The smaller cans, because I can't drink as much of that. So, let's see here. Let us get going with this. Dr. Pepper mixed with Dr. Pepper. It's like a doctor. It's a pepper and pepper. It's a pepper and pepper. Let's see here. English, nice. Well, that's driving age, isn't it? Have you not seen the movie, McLovin' It? I mean, tell me that that's what your name is a reference to. Daft, dude, no worries. I will not give you any trouble for any sort of English you speak, but I totally can't read the Cyrillic, or what are they called? What's it called? The Russian alphabet? Is it Cyrillic? I actually don't know. The Russian alphabet, I can't read that at all, so I won't be able to respond to anything that's in Russian. So anyways, how we doing? 5:52. I think we're doing good. Let us... Maybe what we should do is kick this off at 6 p.m. and then we will get going, because we've got a lot of stuff going in chat over here. Let me actually bring this up to you. Don't listen to him. Who's stupid? Who, me? I'm kind of dumb. Maybe. Dude, McLovin' It, thanks for hanging out. Drive safe. Travel safe. Whatever. Fukuda. Again. Thanks again for last night, man. Thanks for joining us for Kerbal boot camp here. I do appreciate the donations you sent last night. That was really awesome of you. For the donations, supporting the channel. That's also cool. Dugautas. What's up? Pajama 18. Wow, a bunch of people coming in. Pajama 18. You had an underscore in your name before or something, didn't you? I thought you did. Ooh, I better pause that. I don't need to have that going. But I do need to have this going. I've got that. I've got that. Oh, really? Das, make a giant rocket until 6. So make a giant rocket for the next 7 minutes. I'll do it. Here, how's this? No, giant rocket. Okay. Let's start with the largest rocket piece. Let's go all the way up to the top of the fab. And I think we're going to do something like this. You wanted me to make a giant rocket. Daff, thanks for the follow. Thanks for joining us for Kerbal Boot Camp. We're going to have some fun here. We're going to get to space. Right now, we're burning some time. That looks good. Yeah, that pod. Well, now. All right. So, giant rocket, he says. How giant? You mean giant as in tall or giant as in not tall? Let's slap Kerbal Engineer on there. Let's see. Here. Need a black box for this for sure. Slap it on 1x symmetry. We can put it here. I like it. 5,000 meters per second delta V, 1.87 on the launch pad. We are going to pull the old trickaroo here by slapping that in. 1.67 on the launch pad. That means that this can just about support itself. Therefore, we shall... 6x symmetry, maybe? Alright, 1.68. I like it. Dugataz! Thanks for enrolling in Kerbal Space Academy. We're doing Kerbal Boot Camp right now. Let me put these on in this symmetry. No. Nope, come on now. There we go. Is that good? Nope, it's not going to fit in that direction. But it needs to be taller, I guess, huh? The thing is, we won't be able to get it much taller and still have it do its thrust to weight. What is that? The thrust to weight is not changing. You notice that the thrust to weight is not changing and the delta V is not changing. That's actually pretty big. How many parts is this? How much fuel does it have? He may need to be able to stack separate. Y'all think I can get this to orbit? I don't think I can get this to orbit. Let's see here. Did I miss anything else? Giant rocket. That rocket looks like a pencil. Claude Henry Smoot. Sorry, I had to drink some Dr. Pepper. Ah, yes. Fukuda, I love your comment. I get down sometimes when I look at other streams. More power to everybody who gets online and streams, but sometimes to see what people want. Let's do this. Let's do that. I'm going to put a decoupler in here. I'm going to see if I... Alright, wait. And this thingy, nobody ever uses... Oh, whatever. 909's fine. We'll slap one of these little things on here. That should be enough to deorbit us. You there. You there. You there. You there. You there. That's good. Where is the... This thingy. This thingy. Overkill. Actually, we can demonstrate a really awesome point here. We can totally demonstrate an awesome point, right? I've got a huge freaking rocket here. I'm not going to lie. This thing is freaking huge. And let me put one more thing on there. I definitely know I'm going to need some of this action. Look at this rocket. Kerbal Engineer says it'll go to space. Let's do that. Kerbal Engineer says a total of 6473 Delta V 5612 in the lifter stage. The problem with this rocket is going to be keeping it straight. That is definitely going to be the problemo. But let's see how far I can get it. We have 3 minutes to get it go. Let's rock. Getting an E-Class. Matrix Iran, we got handled by bugs last night, and I actually ran out of time. I have that game saved. We will get it to orbit, but last night, unfortunately, we did not get that asteroid captured because the game kept bugging out on us, which was really frustrating. Not gonna lie. But quick, big rocket launch. Let's see what we got here. Googliali? Googliali? I think it's gonna go. I'm gonna go with Googliali. Googliali. What's going on? Oh, look, the light is already changing and my green screen is already fuzzy. Whatever, we're not gonna worry about it. We are gonna have to be fixing that green screen. Let's see if this thing will go to space. Throttle up, 1.67 on the launch pad. That means that we need to go. Oh, there's that McMahon guy again. Thanks for the follow. Googliali also thanks for the follow. 1.67 on the launch pad means we throttle all the way up. Let's see if this thing will go to space. I don't know if it will, but we're about to find out. 3, 2, 1. Oh, buddy, we should have totally put those things together. Let's turn SAS on. These boys are going to be wobbly rocketeers down here. That is a lot of freaking engines. That's a lot of thrust. I'm not sure. Will it tell me the vessel's thrust? It will if I go over into it, but let's see. Now, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. What did Pajama? Oh, Pajama. 10K. In fact, right here, if I can keep it going straight, I will do a example launch for you. It is 10K, though. I'm going to get that rock, Fukuda. I'm going to get it. I have that save file. That rock is going by. I've designed new craft. We will get that rock. The Kraken will not win that battle. So anyways, we just tossed together a quick rocket here. The moral of the story is you don't need a rocket this size to go to orbit. I don't actually think I'm going to be able to get this rocket to orbit, but we're going to see. Notice how awesomely aerodynamic the top is. Remember in Kerbal Space Program, stock physics, the physics are made up and the aerodynamics don't matter. So you don't have to worry about it. With the top of this craft looking like a huge catcher for rockets. How am I doing? 187 past 6. We're doing good on that. This rocket is basically just wasting fuel to get into space. I have no clue what's going to happen when I do a gravity turn, but remember our checkpoints. 5K meters, 150 meters per second. 10K, we want to be going about 260. At 10K, I'm going to turn east 45 degrees, pointing right here on the nav ball. Let's get that done. There's 260 at 10. Yeah, that's right. Now I'm going to try a turn. These STR parts are OP. But here I am trying a turn. And when you do your gravity turn, remember, just lean it over. Don't go all of a sudden. You just want to lean it over and kind of pull the green ball with you. As you pull the green ball, my kind of rule of thumb is to keep this angle right here, even with the edge of the green thing, and I'm just kind of pulling that green velocity vector over. So here we go, we continue to do this. Next checkpoint, watch your apoaps. Wait till it gets to 50. When your apoaps right here gets to 50, you turn and burn at the horizon. You can also press M if you don't have Kerbal Engineer, and hover over that to wait till the apoaps in the map view gets to 50. But we want that to get to 50. When it gets to 50, we're really darn close. When it gets to 50, flip it to orbital view and keep turning over. We're turning and burning. We don't want this to get much higher than 80. I would shoot for 80 for my first orbit if I was you. You really only have to get to 70, but I would shoot for 80. I'm just continuing to pull this orbit over, pulling it over, boss. 54 electric thrust. This thing is gonna like 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. Orbital velocity. Oh, look at us draining that battery. Wow, we like drained the battery in like 1 second. We can charge the battery back up though. That was the problem with this craft. Too much battery drain. What is that? That's still going down? Jeez. Anyways, what am I? 13, and my other stage had what? 11, 19 in it? We can put this thing in orbit. In fact, we don't need the entire rest of this rocket anymore, even though it's got more fuel. Let's go ahead and turn that off. Let's go over here to the map view. Let's see if we can't circularize. I'm going to put a node right there on my apoaps. I'm going to lean the planet that way. I'm going to pull the green prograde marker on the node until I get a periaps. Thoop. There a periaps appeared. And then I'm going to keep pulling that marker until the periaps switches places. Apoaps went to that side. Periaps came this way. That means we're circularizing. Was a 27-second burn coming up in a minute 23. Let's get up there and do that right quick. No. Don't be turning on me, girly. Oh, that's okay. We'll get there. Oh, I'm still in physics warp. All right. There, that would have helped. 27-second burn. I half it. Half of 27, 28, 14. I know I do the math really fast when I do that. You just get used to it. If you need to pause in half 27, you can totally do that in your own game. No worries. There's 14. Now we start our burn to circularize. And let's see here. Look at this. SSTO, yo. SSTO. Got it. Yo, dog, I heard you liked engines. Let's go ahead and get circularized here. I have so much Delta V. I could actually take this craft to the moon. How interesting is that? It would need some power generation, though. That's a circular orbit. Not really. 113 by 81. I burned a little bit too much there. Look at all those rockets. And all we did with all of those rockets was get Jebediah Kerman in his little pod to space. Hello. Say hi to the class, Jebediah Kerman. Hello, everyone. That was my rocket. I made it to space. I could fly around. I think I have, what, 1,100 Delta V on here? Yeah, I could do a moon Earth pass. There's a lot of stuff I could do with this. So, the moral of the story here, and it is a really good kickoff to getting to orbit. Look at that freaking rocket that we took to space. Was I able to get to space using that rocket and just having this little pod as the payload? Yes! I totally could do that. I would have been really embarrassed if I hadn't been able to do that, actually. You don't need that rocket to put that in space. It will work, yes, but it does not necessary to have that many of the 4X engine clusters. Look at that thing. It looks ridiculous. It is not necessary to have that sort of huge lifter stage. It's an SSTO. That sort of lifter stage to get Jeb into space. So what we're going to do here... is go on back to the vehicle assembly, and we are going to talk about my first rocket. That one was a huge rocket. It was insane. It flew really well. I thought it was gonna blow up, and I thought it was gonna be spectacular, and it didn't blow up. It just flew fine. Quick, big rocket. I didn't even strut it. I just tossed this stuff together. I mean, had I tossed some power generation on there, we would have been freaking golden. And maybe some batteryage. Yes. Yes. I mean, if we had done that, this rocket would have been really awesome. You could see it from Earth. Oh my gosh. So we reverted that flight. I am going to get caught up on chat. Then we are going to build a rocket that is not that big, that is going to get us to our first orbit. Let's see here. People in chat. Das made a big ship. Seem feasible. Yes, Fukuda, that is awesome. I try to do the same sort of thing. I try to keep the payloads within a certain size. I mean, it's all about role-playing. I mean, if you want to, I'm looking at this comment right here. If you want to role-play and say, geez, I want my rocket to actually look aerodynamic, there's some procedural fairing mods that you can use. Yeah, actually, you said it right there in the next comment. It is all about role-playing and whatever floats your boat. If you want to launch a huge space station that is not aerodynamic at all, go for it. If you want a rocket with a procedural fairing that looks awesome, go for it. It is all up to what you want to do. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. More spaceships. Yay. Yep, we're going to be doing that. Christopher Pie 2. Welcome to Kerbal Boot Camp. We're going to be getting rockets into orbit. We're going to be landing on the moon. We're going to be designing, piloting landers, all sorts of stuff. Circularizing. Dat wiggle dough. Take it to Jupiter. Except where is Jupiter in this game? I've never seen it. Brain fried. Is bigger always better when it comes to rocket? The entire point of the lesson? No. Bigger was not better. We didn't need that. Big of a rocket. Probably see Earth. Yes. Days they're back. All right. Kerbal Space Program. There we go. Procedural fairings. Yes. Rabid Banana. Welcome. Kerbal Boot Camp. I missed everything. I don't know what else I missed. I did miss the entire chat. So, back to the game here. Moral of the story. Didn't need this rocket, which was going to cost us 1.678 million credits to get into orbit. 1.678 million was a little bit much to put Jeb in orbit. The cool thing is, look at this. I'm just going to start taking parts off. We could get to space with this, right? Our Delta V, over 4,000. That's good. Let's take this off. Our Delta V, over 4,000. That's good. Our Delta V, over 4,000. That's good. Our Delta V, over 4,000. That's good. This rocket costing 100,000 would get us to space just as efficiently as the rocket costing 1.6 million, because all those parts were doing were really just carrying themselves, right? Not cool for them to just carry themselves. Akari Akaza, welcome to Kerbal Boot Camp. We're talking about rockets. We're talking about not designing wasteful rockets. We're going to be getting to space. But y'all saw, as I removed those parts, Delta V on Kerbal Engineer here did not change. I totally set it up that way on purpose. But all of those other stages, the only thing they were doing was carrying themselves to space. That's all. Nothing else. In fact, what could we do? Actually, to continue on with the illustration here, what could we do? We don't even need that part, right? We can just slap on, as final illustration here. Can I do it? I don't think these parts are overpowered enough to do it, but let's have a look. Where's that one that has the... There we go. Let's try 3. 3 Moss tanks. I'm just going to tweak this right quick. This one. Get in there. Again, we're just doing some illustrative things about rocket design here. I designed a super freaking huge rocket. 3.21 on the pad. That means we can carry a lot more fuel. So let's do that. I can just add more tanks in, but I wanted those same tanks. There we go. What is that? 2.6 on the pad. Wow, we can carry more fuel. 2.18 on the pad. We can carry more fuel. Oops. Bone to that. Somebody said something about a pencil rocket. What is that? 1.88 on the pad. We can carry more fuel. And you see what I'm looking at, right? When I take off. 6.33. That's not right. What is that? What is that? What is this engine? Oh, no, a 1.82 on the pad. Alright, I can carry more fuel. All I'm doing in Kerbal Engineer, I'm looking at Kerbal Engineer here. And I want this thrust to weight in Kerbal Engineer to be about 1.7. Check this out. The illustration here, don't mind me, 1.7 on the pad, 4,000 Delta V. This rocket here, that rocket looks terrible. I wonder if I could get that to space. This actually looks a lot like an Estes model rocket. I'm not sure I'd be able to get this to space. We'd have to see. But on the pad, 1.7 thrust to weight with over 4,000 Delta V, right? This rocket here, costing $17,000, would get to space just as well as this rocket here, 1.6 on the pad, over 4,000 Delta V. This one cost $106,000. This will get us to space. with some curious flying, this should be able to get us to space. I would probably need to add some... In fact, let me do that. We're illustrating things here, right? We are totally illustrating things. Let me try this here. Did I miss... I missed somebody. Oh my gosh, I missed somebody, didn't I? Christopher Pye. Thanks for the follow. Did I get that? I totally got that. Nice. No, it's not US dollars. It's credits or it's funds. It's like the little square root sign. Let's see this wobbly rocket here. I do feel like I need to put two things in. You will see what I'm doing here. Number one, I need to put in some sort of guidance unit in the middle, and I need to put in some reaction control. Actually, we'll use this one in the middle. Like that. 1.69 on the pad, 3994. That should actually do us, I think. Power generation we're going to need. RTGs. No, we're not going to need power generation. We're going to be running those most of the time here. Did I get a Kari? I did get a Kari. I did get a Kari. Thank you, everyone. Let's launch this. And this rocket that cost under 20,000 versus this rocket that cost 106,000 versus the first rocket we made. Actually, I'll do it again because I thought it was awesome. Versus the first rocket we made, which was, come on, 6x symmetry now. There we go. Then we did this number, I think. I don't even actually remember. Something like that, probably. Remember, I was just basically spamming these parts onto there. Was that the one we made? Yeah. That was the one we made. So this rocket that cost 1.64 versus this rocket that cost 20,000. Let's see if we can get this thing to orbit. It may be close. It may be close. I know I can get it to orbit using the pod. So let's launch this. Let's light this candle, y'all. Who else did I get? Its symbol is a stylized F. It looks more like a square root. I say square root. I totally say square root. Is there monetary policy controlled by the Federal Reserve? Actually, there's just an infinite amount of monies. SAS engage. Throttle up. Again, I'm going to do a basic launch here before I get to the exact specifics of designing the rocket. The basic launch profile is, I'm here on the ground. I press the T key on my keyboard, which enables SAS. See this SAS light right here on the nav ball turning on and off. SAS, if you're new to Kerbal Space Program, keeps your rocket going straight as long as you have the control authority to do it. Basically, when SAS is on, it uses electric charge or RCS in order to keep your rockets heading where you have it, as opposed to the rocket wobbling all over directions. I also do panel lock, which means click on this little fuel icon up here. That makes that panel up there stick. That's just a total amount of my fuel reserves and that sort of stuff so I can watch it. And the last thing is throttle up. Holding down shift on your keyboard moves the throttle here. When you first launch, when you first come out to the rocket, it'll be at 50%. You hold down shift, it throttles all the way up. And now I'm at full throttle. Let us see if I can get this one. It may be too wobbly, I'm not going to lie. The last thing I'm going to do, you won't normally have to do this, but I'm going to do control from there as a wobble guard. And space. So here we go, Jeb on the pencil rocket. Let's see if Jeb can get to space on the pencil rocket. And while I'm going, remember our first checkpoint, 5,000 meters, about 150 meters per second. Because I started off with 1.7 thrust to weight, I know if I just go at full throttle, when I get up to 5,000 meters, I will be going about 150, 160. That is how she works. So let's see what we've got here. Actually, that looks awesome. We like started off with the fattest rocket. It's not wobbling yet. You know, Levelicious, we think on the fly around here, man. We totally think on the fly. And I do appreciate that. I love the user submissions. I love taking ideas from people, and I always try to work it into the lesson plans. That was actually, look at this, 5,000, just over 160. Engineer in 1.6 or 1.7 launch pad, that's how we do that. Remember our next checkpoint, 10,000 at 260. We're going to be going a little bit fast there, I think. Let's give it a try. Because we're already up to 220, and we're crossing 8. Let's see what happened. Patented wobble stopper. More fun for your funds. That's awesome, Icebox. So 10K begin. Now, DOS, you say, why isn't your rocket wobbling as much as you had anticipated? Well, now, I'm glad you asked. It's got a little bit of wobble to it, but here is what I did. The patented wobble stopper, like Icebox called it. KSP's algorithm that tries to keep your rocket straight is relative to the control segment, the part that you're controlling from, right? If I was to right-click on the pod up here by default and do control from here and turn this rocket, it would wobble a lot more than it is. However, I didn't want to see how it's kind of wobbling and it won't stop. You can see the control inputs moving. What I did is I put a probe core at the center of mass. I clicked on control from here. Time to turn and burn, dang it. 63, 64, 65. Ah, screet. Talking too much. Not orbiting enough. But since I put this here, I put both the probe core and a reaction control module in the middle of the center of mass. And instead of trying to wobble about the control, which is up here, which basically gives me this, and the entire rocket is a big flimsy thing to wobble about, I put the control in the middle, and I split my wobble in half. Because my control's in the middle, I have a little bit of wobble in this direction, a little bit of wobble in this direction, and when it wobbles, the game doesn't actually think that it's wobbling. Let me see if I can illustrate the difference here. See how I'm giving it up and down pitch? Is that working? Yes, I am broadcasting my keys, aren't I? Yes, I am. As I give her up and down pitch, she's not actually wobbling too much. You don't really see this moving very much. Watch what happens if I control from here. I hope this works. If I control from here and I do the same thing, you don't really see it that much. She's really not that bad. So that's okay. I just don't think that we've got enough mass back there to do it, or enough reaction control. So anyways, ignore everything I just said. It actually wasn't that wobbly, though. Let's do control from there. Let's put it into orbit. 69, 70. What was my apoapse? Remember the same thing we did last time? Again, I do this live. I don't test stuff in advance. I'm not embarrassed when I say something that doesn't actually turn out to be true. That statement would have been true in older versions of KSP, but when we got the STS parts and they did the joint stiffening, the much controverted joint stiffening, 78 versus 82, that fixed it so that a rocket like this would be a lot less wobbledy. Here, let's use the fine adjustment, because that puts us at 80 by 80. Perfect. Now all we have to do is burn the node. 27 seconds, round it up to 28 and half it, so 14, and we're going to burn at T minus 14 again. Here's something else to look at. This is going to be an 1150 burn. We had 1180 in the tank. That means this entire rocket is going to go into space without decoupling the stage. So this was just about the perfect amount of delta V to get us to space. And I'll explain some of those concepts when we get back to the VAB. But here you go. You can see we are going to space with the wobbly rocket that wasn't quite as wobbly as we all had anticipated. And to let us stop the burn. There we go. 82 by 75. That's good. Check it out. Same sort of thing. Jebediah Kerman, who is in space. Say hi to everybody. Compare and contrast the bigger rocket with this rocket. This rocket cost us 20. Jeb and his little pod got to space. We made a rocket that cost us 100,000. Jeb and his pod got to space. We made a rocket that cost 1.6 million. Jeb and his pod got to space. So, that is what we were doing. Nice, Jeb. That is what we were doing. You want to know what's really difficult? Crashing into things in space. Let's see here. Survey says... Got it! Poor Jeb. And we actually killed the command pod. We rotated the rocket around. The chute went that way. I thought we were going to lose the chute, actually. That went that way. This thing is still... Actually, it's still wobbling around some. Adventures in reverting your flight. That was totally on purpose. Wow, I missed a lot of stuff in chat. Let's see here. The Weeble Wobble. Das, can I do a plane? QWERTY. Right now I am doing Kerbal Boot Camp, and we're starting off with my first orbit. Kind of like I haven't been to orbit before. And I'm talking through all of the... where's my pen? I've got my pen. Right here. I'm talking through some of the concepts on getting to orbit, making rockets, that sort of stuff. And my entire concept for the day is start at, I've never got a rocket to space before, end at landing on the moon, rendezvousing with the space station, building a space plane. So I will be building a space plane, I think. It is going to be in the evening, but we're here at Kerbal Boot Camp, and it's going to be a little while. I will build a plane. I also do other streams. I do Kerbal Space Academy sessions, which are 2-hour sessions on a specific topic, and SSTOs is something I do once a week. So if you want to follow me on here, you want to follow me on Twitter, you will definitely get caught up for a dedicated 2-hour SSTO session. I've got 3 different sessions I do: Intro to Space Planes, Advanced Space Planes, and Super Advanced Space Planes. I don't know what the third one should be named because I haven't done that one yet. Zogs. Dude, Levelicious, thanks for the help there. Zogs, it is the bracket keys right next over to the backslash. So, we designed a bunch of different rockets. We proved that you don't need multiple stages to go to orbit. You can totally get Jeb to orbit on this $20,000 rocket using just these parts. No big deal, really. But this may not be the most efficient rocket to go to space. We can probably get to space for a little bit less. For the purposes of this, splice planes. I'm talking fast. I'm talking fast. You know me. I'm talking fast. For the purposes of this, I am going to build a standard lifter design, right? When you go to space, I really wish I had a graphic for this, right? But there are 3 parts, I guess, really, to going to space. There is the lifter, there is the kicker, and there is the payload. And we usually build them in the reverse order. We usually build them... I almost did it. I almost fell for it. I almost did payload, kicker, lifter. And then I did it anyways. But when you're building things, you usually start with the payload, and then you build a kicker stage, orbital insertion stage. You'll hear it called different things. And then you build a lifter stage. So let's talk through that. Again, guys, I know this is not the most complex rocket. I'm calling this Kerbal Boot Camp. I don't want to build the largest rocket in the world, but I will do this for you. I will build her in 2 different sizes. I'll do this once, building the smallest pod, and then I'll go back again and I'll do it building the largest pod, and we'll go for the same mission profile, which is to get a pod to space with 2 different size rockets, starting with the smallest pod, which is where I recommend you start, and going on to the larger pod, this pod right here. I'll build rockets in both kind of form factors, and we will show the differences in the rockets, which will basically just be cost. So 3 stages. Let me go ahead and save this guy as the pencil rocket. Save. And then let's make a new... Actually, no. Let's do that. Get rid of it. And we're going to save this as the Intro to Space. Quite literally, it's like an introduction to space, and this is also the way you get to space. Kind of see how I did that? Intro to Space. So I've started off with a really simple payload here, right? You can have a lot more... That's apparently the very top of the VAB. I can't zoom up anymore. There we go. Let's move it down. Actually, let's get it way down here, because we're not going to need that much room. So, I've got this guy. What? I don't know, I missed that. Alright. Alright, chat. Cybertech also! What's going on? Should have upgraded to 1.0. Cybertech, I will do this shout out for you. I have not yet updated to Kerbal Engineer 1.0. When 0.25 comes out, my new Academy saves are all going to be to 1.0. I'm going to go with 2 KSP installations. One that's modded for my career saves and my free play, and one that is mostly stock except for the informational mods. When they do 2.5, I'm going to set up that special Academy install, and I'm going to move to the new Kerbal Engineer Cybertech. So, anybody who doesn't know, Cybertech is the creator of Kerbal Engineer over here. So, I am going to upgrade with 2.5. That is my plan. That way I have 2 installs so I don't have to break my old craft and that sort of stuff. But I do have the new install, the 1.0 Kerbal Engineer, just because you told me to do it. I could always call people maggot. Let's see here. I needed a drill hat. Yeah, I don't... Army, I called it Kerbal Boot Camp, but, yeah. I would sit here and yell about steers and queers and 2 things come out of Texas, and I didn't know they stacked it that high. But I'm not going to. It's just called Boot Camp. Let's see here. Cybertech is a bad mamma jamma. Cybertech's awesome. But now you know. Now, get done and give me 20. Now you know Cybertech. That is the plan. I am going to be going to 1.0 with 0.25. Because you're awesome. Back to this. This is a very simple craft, like I said. This is going to be our payload, right? It's very simple. I'll build something with a lot bigger payload when we get to the end. Or when we get further into the session here. We have made a very simple payload. It's a very special payload because Jeb's going to ride in it. But this is our payload stage. One thing I've been talking about Kerbal Engineer, right? I've got Kerbal Engineer up here in the corner. You can always see it on my screen. I basically don't go anywhere without Kerbal Engineer. The cool thing about Kerbal Engineer is it doesn't play the game for you. All it does is give you information, and if you know what to do with that information, you become a regular badass at the game. The information it can be complex, it can be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be, though. If you watch the streams here, you will totally see that it doesn't have to be overwhelming. But, like I said, Cybertech, give Cybertech a shout out in the channel because he is the creator of Kerbal Engineer. And what Kerbal Engineer does is it gives you a lot of information about your rocket, both as you're building it and as you're flying it. In the VAB over here, we're going to be looking at two very important things. I'll go ahead and click on compact mode there. We're going to be looking at thrust to weight and delta V. If you're not familiar with the concepts of thrust to weight and delta V is basically how much it's changed in velocity. Delta means change. V stands for velocity. Delta V is change in velocity. It basically means how much I can change my velocity, in space, my situation in space, really. Because when I'm in space, as I change my velocity, I'm also changing my situation. If I'm in a low orbit and I give it more velocity prograde, that will get me into a higher orbit. If I'm in a high orbit and I give myself more velocity retrograde, that will give me a lower orbit. If I'm sitting on the ground, stopped, and I give velocity, I do a change in velocity up away from the planet, that will help me take off from the planet. So delta V, change in velocity, stands for how much I can change my velocity, how much I can change my situation in space. It is a very important concept. Thrust to weight. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in more research, delta V, you can look up Salovsky's rocket equation, which is the calculation of how, it's not the exact delta V calculation, but it basically describes the concept of delta V and the fact that a rocket, when it's going, has to basically carry all of its fuel with it, and it gets a change in velocity by lighting fuel on fire, not really, combusting fuel, exploding fuel, making it go boom, tossing it out the back of the rocket, and changing the momentum of the stuff it's tossing out the back really fast for forward momentum, given Newton's third law. Third law is the equal opposite reaction law. First law is remains at rest unless I'm acted upon about an outside force. But anyways, you can look that up. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Actually, where's whoa, who was it? Where was it? 07, from Russia. Man, you're new and I don't remember your name. Scrolling back through the chat. Daff. Dude, Daff, if you're here, you could totally tell us how to pronounce Salovsky's rocket equation. Because I just say Salovsky's. Anyways, thrust to weight. Another very important concept when I'm building this little simple rocket here is thrust to weight. The important thing is that thrust to weight is basically the ratio of how much push my engine has versus the weight of the rocket. And the cool thing is that changes over time. As I use fuel and throw it out the back of the rocket, I actually weigh less. And so the more fuel that I use, the less that I weigh. As I burn this fuel out of this rocket, my thrust to weight will actually increase. The thrust to weight won't go down, it'll increase as I get rid of fuel because my mass goes down. We can actually illustrate that, I think. Let's click on that. You can see the mass of the craft is currently 1971, right? If I come over here and pretend that I'm burning fuel, as I burn fuel, look at what happens. Now my mass is 1671. I burned 300 kilograms of fuel, and now my thrust to weight is 3.0. If that fuel was back in there, my thrust to weight would be 2.59. So burning half a tank of gas takes my thrust to weight from 2.59 up to 3.0. Thrust to weight is basically how fast you can accelerate, right? So if you have something where you need to, let's say you need to change your velocity really quickly, the thrust to weight, a higher thrust to weight will mean that you can accelerate more quickly. You've got more thrust per kilogram in your craft, right? Different engines give you different amounts of thrust. So as we look at this engine here, I've got the LV909 on here. Let me go down to the engine. You can hover over the engines over here. I just clicked on the fuel tab, the propulsion tab, and hover over the engines. If I right click on the engine, I can see, if I right click, I can see some additional stats about the engine. You can see this guy here has 50 thrust, which I can always see over there. The 50 thrust on this engine, let me stick to thrust right now. The 50 thrust on that engine is what's going to determine the thrust to weight. So I've got X amount of weight, and I've got X amount of thrust. The ratio between that thrust from this LV909 to the weight of this rocket is 2.59. If we give it a different engine, like look at here, the T45, right? The T45's max thrust, right here you can see, has 200 units of thrust, as opposed to the 909's 50. Let's see how that affects things. If I put this on there, Now my thrust to weight is 6.86, which is a lot more thrust to weight. That actually looks pretty wacky. That rocket is like half engine, which is kind of cool. But you can see that because this engine has 200 thrust and that engine has 50 thrust, the thrust to weight on this is just about 4 times as much. So let's put that down. Some other things. The nuclear engine. Let's put a nuclear engine on there. There's a nuclear engine. That's only got 1.64 thrust to weight. That's because the nuclear engine puts out 60 thrust. However, the nuclear engine weighs a lot more than the 909. You can see the mass of the engine there. The mass of the 909 is 0.5. The mass of the atomic rocket motor, the nuke, the LVN, is 2.25. But this one puts out 60 thrust and that one puts out 50 thrust. So even though this one puts out a little bit more thrust, overall the thrust to weight is a lot worse because this engine in and of itself is so heavy. I guess it's the shielding from the reactor or something. However, just because we have a little bit less thrust doesn't mean we don't get something for it. You can actually look at the delta V here, right? And when I put the 909 on there, there we go. I'm going to click on atmospheric stats. In engineer, there's a button in here. Atmospheric means how efficient your engine is in atmosphere. Non-atmospheric means how efficient your engine is outside of atmosphere. I'm going to explain that concept. Here you can see the LV909 gets 1119 delta V when there's no atmosphere, in vacuum, right? If I go away from the 909 and I put the nuke on there, all of a sudden I get almost the same thing. But everybody says that nukes are more efficient. What's going on? Nukes are supposed to be so crazy efficient. They're supposed to be the best engines for vacuum, yada, yada, yada. Why is it giving me 1132 versus 1119? That's a difference of what? 13. That's a difference of 13. Because the nuclear engine is so freaking heavy, 2.25 versus 0.5, what you gain in efficiency, which I'll talk about in a second, you lose by carrying the extra mass of the engine. So for this craft, would a nuclear engine be more efficient? Technically, yes. Would I get more delta V by putting a nuclear engine on this craft? I would be better off just putting the 909 on there. I get almost exactly the same delta V, and I don't have to carry the weight of the nuclear engine. And look at the cost difference, $2787 versus 10 grand, 10 grand 700. The nuclear engine, again, hovering over the parts over here to get the information. Hovering over the parts, I can see the cost on the nuclear engine is $8,700. The cost on the 909 is $750. This craft gets almost the exact same performance, but the cost is insanely more. I mean, that's a difference of $7,000 in cost. The other thing, look at the total mass of the craft. Here my total mass is 1971 using the 909. Slap that nuke on there, got the same delta V, but the mass of the craft is almost twice as much. That means that I'm going to have a bigger lifter to get it in orbit. It's going to cost more to get it in orbit, even though the craft is going to perform exactly the same. So, you're talking about why? Well, wait a second. We're talking about the nuclear engines are so much more efficient. What does that mean, nuclear engines being more efficient? Let's go over here. Yeah, Cybertech, you totally got me, man. You totally got me. I didn't mean to snipe you there, but I don't know which one you're going to see first. Cybertech is exactly right. You have to build a bigger launch stage in order to do that. Caboose, I'll answer that question in just a second. Let me explain the ISP of an engine, right? I said that you could hover over your engines over here, and you could right-click on them to get more information. Stick for me. There we go. You can hover over it to get more information. Every engine has a lot of different stats. We've already talked about max thrust. We've already talked about the mass of the engine. Some other stats that an engine has, if you right-click on the engine, you get this additional information sticking out the side. Let me go through it right quick. Alternator, that just means that the engine can generate electrical power. More to that whenever I start talking about power generation on this craft. Here's more information on the engine. This is the important thing for us. I'm going to hop back. Gimbal, can the engine actually change its direction of firing? That helps you do craft control. It helps you turn your craft and that sort of stuff. It'll also give you a vector range. The larger degree, the more the engine can turn off the gimbal and give you some thrust vectoring. There are some engines that don't have gimbals. There are also some engines that don't have alternators. The last thing, the engine tab. Let me talk about this in detail. We talked about the max thrust, 60. Minimum thrust isn't used right now. I think it's just a placeholder. here is the important thing that we really want to think about. Engine ISP. What does ISP stand for? Actually, you know something? I don't know what the term ISP stands for. Define ISP. Let's see here. It's not an internet service provider. That's not going to help. ISP, ISP. Maybe somebody can throw it over in chat, because I don't know. Wow. Slightly embarrassing. Not completely embarrassing, just slightly embarrassing. Something about efficiency. Specific impulse. Thank you. Impulse specific. Thank you, Cybertech. I was about to say it. I should have known that, yeah. Let's see here. Specific impulse. We won't get into the specific impulse equation, which basically is how it relates the velocity that you throw things out the back of the engine with the force you get from this, basically the size of the particles, I think. We won't talk about that. I don't know that I could exactly explain it off the top of my head. I didn't even know what ISP... I knew it was impulse. I just didn't know. Dude! I gotta stop for that. Muga! What's going on, man? The noise you just heard was Muga tossing a donation out there. Thank you so much for supporting Kerbal Space Academy. We're doing Kerbal Boot Camp today, man. The donations that come in, I totally appreciate. I am going to give you a serious shout out because I've just now got all the donation stuff and that sort of stuff set up. I love doing these Kerbal Boot Camps, the Kerbal Space Academies, the free play streams. They're really great. They take a lot of time, though. And the donations that come in help me justify spending more time on this. I need to get another monitor. I need to get a different... I don't know. My headset's still working. I mean, my next purchase is going to be another monitor to help me do the chat. But I really appreciate all the support from people. I feel like NPR. It's like, Kerbal Boot Camp is brought to you through generous funding of donations such as Muga, who just gave us a donation. Dude, thank you so much, Muga. That's awesome. So we were talking about engine efficiency before the explosion noise happened in my ear. We were talking about engine efficiency. We were talking about ISP, specific impulse of the engine. Over here, and if somebody wants to put the technical definition of specific impulse over there, maybe link to the cheat sheet that has the equation in it, that's fine. That's like extended study sort of deal. But here's the important thing, and I'm going to start off with the atomic rocket motor, right? Because it's got the biggest discrepancy. The ISP of an engine has two different pieces, right? Not two different pieces. There are two different stats that Kerbal Space Program shows you. One is the ISP in atmosphere, which is ASL, and the other is the ISP in vacuum, which is in space. It actually changes the atmospheric ISP efficiency changes based on how thick the atmosphere is. So down here, sea level at Kerbin, where KSC is, where we launch from, that engine is going to be very inefficient. As you go up, though, jeez, there went another one. Dude, Brain Fried also. Thank you, Brain Fried, for the support. That's freaking awesome. I totally appreciate that. I mean, when donations like that come in, I'm going to be able to do this a lot and a lot more. My green screen's also going off, I can see now. But I mean, dude, Brain Fried and Muga, both thank you for the donations. They're going to let me justify spending a lot more time on this, getting a website up, getting more classes set up. I mean, I really appreciate the support from everybody. That's so freaking cool. So, two different engine ISPs. One is at atmosphere, where it's very thick down here at Kerbin sea level. Remember, as we go up out of the atmosphere gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it actually goes away at about 70K in Kerbal Space Program. As we claw our way up out of the atmosphere, since it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner, the engine will get more and more efficient because it's a gradient. The ISP of this engine, 220 at sea level in thick atmosphere versus 800 in vacuum. When I'm at 1,000 meter, that'll go up to 230 or 240. When I'm at 5,000 meters, that'll go up even more. When I'm at 10,000 meters, that'll go up even more. It'll become more and more efficient the less atmosphere, the less dense the atmosphere is around us, until we get into space where it'll get that full 800 ISP in vacuum. So, that means that an atomic rocket motor at sea level in thick Kerbin atmosphere, or any other planet that has atmosphere, is very inefficient. 220 is really terrible inefficiency. However, if I can get this rocket up into vacuum, it goes all the way up to 800. Let's compare and contrast that with the 909. So going to the 909 over here, you can see at ASL, at sea level, the 909 is going to give us 300. Higher numbers are better here. At sea level, we get 300, and that's not bad. That's not terrible. It's not the most efficient sea level engine, but it's not 220, that's for sure. But in vacuum, we only get 390. That means that in vacuum, we will be about 33% more efficient than we were down at sea level. This engine is really designed to be used in vacuum. However, it's not the same gradient as a nuclear engine from 220 all the way up to 800. There are some engines in the game, like let's look at this one here. I think is a good example. No, that's not it. Here we have the KS25 times 4 engine cluster. This one goes from 320 to 360. This engine is going to get pretty much the same efficiency whether it's at sea level or whether it's up in vacuum. That's because this is a big lifter stage. Let's look at some other engines. This guy here, 290 versus 340. That's not a very big discrepancy. 320 versus 370 for the skipper, not too bad. 320 versus 360 for the mainsail. So what you can do is you can look at all of these different engines and just highlight them. 270 versus 390, 300 versus 350. The biggest discrepancy you're going to see is in the atomic rocket motor, which is 220 versus 800. So what does this all mean, right? If you're building a lifter, don't use engines that are really inefficient in atmosphere. If you're building an interplanetary craft, you don't have to worry about the atmospheric stats. Look for engines that have very good vacuum efficiency. The nuclear engines, basically. So I think I've covered engines. I think I've covered thrust to weight. I think I've covered delta V. I'm going to go and spend just a second reading the chat and see if I've missed any things here. So let's see here. Let me scroll up and see if I miss. I'm glowing. Too much radiation. Yeah, as the lighting changes here, Icebox, I'm going to have to... It's actually kethane. The room is filling with kethane. But give me just a second here to scroll back and figure out if I missed any questions. Oh, and I'm not supposed to be scrolling this one. Sorry. Needed a smoky hat. Like a drill instructor. Oh, Levelicious. That's a good point. I'm going to come back to it. Thank you, Level. I was supposed to be looking over here and scrolling back the chat. Let's see here. So I'm not actually screwing that up over there. So I've got that. I've got that. Give me 20. I've got that. There we go. Yes, shout out to Cybertech. Good. Wow, I really could have gone for more of a shout out to Cybertech there, y'all. Oh my gosh. Although somebody just apparently Levelicious smacked his monitor. Get me a drill instructor hat. Realizing I have a problem. Rocketry is the most efficient form of weight loss, Fukuda. Yes. As we burn, sweating to the oldies, sweating to the ISP, sweating to the thrust to weight, maybe. You never knew you could right-click the project main fried. Now you know. Take a nap. Dude, Divin, I took a nap too. You put mainsails on everything. Yes, it does. Yes, less delta V. Okay. Specific impulse. Excellent. You do. Hey, Brain Fried, you need to get Kerbal Engineer. Actually, if you scroll down on my channel, click somewhere in the black space off the edge, scroll down the channel just a little bit, and you can see a link to all the mods that I use. I totally recommend everything in the informational section. I use them all the time. They help you understand and see what's going on in the game. They give you visual feedback with numbers and graphs and that sort of stuff as to what's going on in the game. So, RCS Build Aid, Kerbal Engineer, I don't know the rest. RCS Build Aid, Kerbal Engineer, Kerbal Alarm Clock, and Navball Docking Indicator, Atmospheric Trajectories. I use those things all the time. I wouldn't recommend, especially if you're new to KSC, running and trying to learn the game. If you're serious about learning the game, trying to learn the game without having those, because they give you so much freaking feedback. So, scroll down just a little bit and look at those mods. They're easy to install. Let me see if I missed anything else. Brain Fried, during boot camp I don't do the music. I just do the regular stuff because it's more about me talking than it is to playing the 8-bit music. Only when I'm done. Yeah, yep. EM Levelish has got it there. Specific impulse. There we go. Internet service provider. Nice, Caboose. Thanks for the link. Muga again. Yes, thanks for the donations. That's so freaking cool. I'm glowing. Dr. Pepper. Too much KSC. Too much nuclear engines. At sea level. Yeah, I tossed sea level in there. ASL is at sea level on Kerbin. Posted a link. Yeah, right? You're not kidding, Levelicious. No, dude, Brain Fried, it did come up. Yours definitely came up. It shows the difficulty. Donate. Tazard Morningstar, welcome to Kerbal Bootcamp. We're getting to space. I need a Ah, yes. Okay, that was an interesting thing. What did Lilu post up there? That is a lot of fuel, Lilu. Not as much as some of the things we've got in orbit, but that's an amount of fuel. That Mugo's got it. Have you seen my orbital fuel rotary? Yeah, there is definitely. There is definitely. All right, so I've caught back up with chat. Everybody who is just joining us, this is Kerbal Bootcamp. We're getting to space for the first time. I am explaining Kerbal Space Program from basically 0 to 60. From the I don't... Nice, Muga, dude. Thank you so much. Basically, I'm explaining Kerbal Space Program from 0 to space, 0 to 60, 0 to a lunar lander, 0 to SSTO, whatever you want to call it. We are going in depth on some of the basic concepts. If you're a KSP OG, you've been playing for a year and a half, ever since freaking Alpha sort of deal, I appreciate the help in chat. I don't know everything. I couldn't even remember what ISP stood for a second ago. So, I don't want anybody to be bored. If you have other ideas, I'm going to miss some things. I'm going to ask for some extra explanations, some links, that sort of stuff. Everybody from people that are totally new to people that are KSP badassery, I appreciate them hanging out here in the channel. So let me see here. We were talking about thrust to weight. We talked about delta V. I didn't see any questions on that stuff. I think we did a good job of copying it, covering it. Someone did bring up another point. There are three different types of engines, I guess. Most of the engines in the game use liquid fuel and oxidizer. You can actually, again, right-click on the engine, and over here it'll tell you what propellants it uses. The propellants are liquid fuel, tells you how much it uses a second, and oxidizer, how much it uses a second. Flame out, don't worry about that. It's not really used yet. But liquid fuel and oxidizer. The Skipper liquid engine uses liquid fuel and oxidizer. Most of the engines will use liquid fuel and oxidizer. However, there are a couple of engines that use different things. If you come down here to the, where's the stock one? There we go. The RT10 solid fuel booster, you can see that the RT10 solid fuel booster doesn't use liquid fuel, it uses solid fuel. That's different. There are other engines that use that. You've got the big KD25K up here, also uses solid fuel. Down here we've got a back solid booster, uses solid fuel. Here we've got the Sepratron 1, uses solid fuel. Another type of fuel that's used, I'll come back to the solid fuel boosters. You'll also, if you hover over this engine, the monopropellant engine, you can see that the propellant for this one is monoprop. That means instead of a normal fuel tank, like this little drum fuel tank we've got, which carries liquid fuel and oxidizer, to run this engine, you would actually have to carry monopropellant, which looks like this. I would have to put some monopropellant on there. I can right-click on that. You can see this is a RCS fuel tank. You can see that the fuel tank carries monoprop 60 or 50 of it. And in order to run this engine, the OT10 or the O10 monopropellant engine, I would have to put monopropellant on the craft. Let's take that off. Another type of engine is a jet engine. A jet engine uses different resources. Let's hover over that. The turbojet engine here. You can see that its propellants are liquid fuel and intake air. So this engine could use the liquid fuel out of this, but it wouldn't actually use any oxidizer. Instead of the oxidizer, the liquid oxidizer that's stored in the fuel tank, it actually uses air intakes. You can grab some of these sweet looking air intakes and put them on there. It uses air intakes, and it will suck in intake air from the atmosphere, use that as an oxidizing agent to oxidize the liquid fuel, toss it out the back, give you thrust. Only works in planets that have oxygen in the atmosphere, which is basically Kerbal, Lathe, the end. So, let's see here. We've got that. We've got that. We talked about those. I'll get more into the jet engines on the jets. You probably won't be using very many jet engines on your first rocket to go into space. Let's go back to those solid fuel boosters because everybody says, wow, solid fuel boosters. We love solid fuel, right? If I put a solid fuel booster on there, it doesn't actually need a separate fuel tank. If you right-click the solid fuel booster itself, you can see that the solid fuel is actually contained in the booster itself. You don't need to have an extra tank on there. One of the differences between the solid fuel booster and every other booster in the game is that once you light this candle, you can't turn it off. You can't throttle it down. You can't do anything. You say go, and just like a little Estes model rocket motor, it's going to go until it either takes you high into the sky or totally destroys your rocket. Versus every other type of engine will respond to throttle control. Shift will throttle you up, you'll get more thrust. Control will throttle you down. I have to look at the keyboard and make sure I say the right key. Control will throttle you down. That means you get less thrust. You can do it with most of the engines. You cannot do it with solid fuel boosters. We'll look at solid fuel boosters in a second. Dan Ruiz, 79, man. Good year to be born, by the way. if that's what that is. Welcome to Kerbal Boot Camp. We're explaining the basics of Kerbal Space Academy here. Starting from zero, we are going to end the evening with a landing on the moon, a space station, an SSTO. Haven't even decided how far we're going to get yet, but this is Kerbal Boot Camp. Thanks for the follow. Let's see here. We've got that, we've got that, we've got that. So, I think maybe I skipped ahead a little bit because I was talking about the different stages of the rocket, and we were talking about the payload, and then we got off into the engines. I think we've covered the engines pretty well. There are definitely some, the FPS lag is real. Crash to the moon. What did I miss? Muga, oh yeah, there you go. Leeler Killick, we actually completely fueled that station from scratch too. No cheats, using the Epic 6 fueler. I think that should have the Epic 6 in it somewhere. Awesome hit, man. I apologize. I do know that we got boot camp started a little bit later than we had tentatively planned. But we're going now, man. We're going now. And I do apologize. I did say that I was going to try and get started earlier. And then we had such a good crowd last night, and freaking donations were coming in, and they said, oh, if I donate, will you keep playing? And I was like, all right. So I kept playing last night, and then I kept playing this morning. And I gotta get some rest, man. I had to get some rest. So we did get started on boot camp a little bit later. I do sincerely apologize, though. We were talking about... we went over the engines. We looked at all the different parts. Just as an aside, you can right-click on most of the parts in here, and you can get things like their mass, their drag. I'm not going to go too far into that right now. But as you hover over things, or you can right-click on things, you can get a little bit more information about it. And you'll see that right-click, like I'm doing here on the RCS ports, right-click will hover. Or sorry, it'll stick that out or not. Let's see here. Back to the parts of my first lifter, right? My first rocket, really. 3 different parts I said. Number 1 was the payload. This little pod is going to be the payload. Number 2 is the kicker, or the orbital insertion stage. That's what's right underneath the payload. The purpose of the orbital insertion stage is to take you from high altitude above Kerbin into a mostly circular orbit. Maybe it doesn't get you all the way there, but it really is designed not to get you altitude, but to get you orbital velocity. I'll explain when we go into orbit the difference between those two things. The 3rd stage, the lifter. The lifter is designed to get you the heck out of the gravity well that is Kerbin. You're standing on the ground. You've got a full Kerbin gravity operating on you. You have very little orbital velocity. The lifter is what gets you from 0 to 45 miles an hour. The kicker gets you from 45 to 60, saying that 60 is orbital velocity. So, the 3 parts of the rocket: payload, kicker, or orbital insertion stage. Kicker's just easier to say. Orbital insertion is 6, kickers 2, and it's easy to say. It's got a nice ring to it. Payload, kicker, lifter. Let's build it. I am just going to go with this. LV909. This is my payload. There are many others like it, but this payload is mine. I am nothing without my payload. My payload is nothing without me. Got a little bit of a boot camp reference there. Let's see here. Cordy Bow, I just got started with that, so not so much. I will come back to the questions in just a second. I just saw that one pop up as I was cleaning things up here. We separate our different stages, for the most part, using stack decouplers. You can find them in the structural tab, the tab that looks like a little bit of a crane here. They're mostly on this, depending on your resolution, they're on the 2nd stage. There are 3 different sizes decouplers. That one, that's not right. That doesn't fit. This porridge is too small. There's another one, looked like this, the Rockomax brand. This decoupler is too large. Last decoupler, this is pretty basic stuff. That decoupler is just right. Basically, the decoupler is a part that puts 2 parts together that has explosives in the middle, and on your command, or sometimes not on your command, will fire the explosives and blow the 2 parts apart. If you didn't know, they are actually directional specific. Put the part that you want to go away towards, put the arrow towards the part you want to go away. The part on the bottom of the decoupler will stick to the decoupler. The part on the top where the arrow is will be separated. Let me illustrate that just so we can see. Let me go and grab an engine. Nope, sorry, this. So basically, when this decoupler decouples, this part will go away. It'll go and it'll go down here. This part will float away, as opposed to if I screw it up and put the arrow in that direction. Oops. Missed it. No, come on. There we go. If I screw up and put the arrow in that direction, When I decouple this, this will go and this will fly away. And this will stay here, which will not be good for your engine because you haven't freed up your engine to do its thing. So, decoupler separates stages. Make sure the arrow is pointing towards the part you want to not be left behind. This part will be left behind. This part will continue into space. Let's build a kicker stage now that I've got the separator in here. So, kicker stage. My Kerbal engineer rules for a kicker stage. At least 1.5 thrust to weight. At least 1000 delta V. We're going to keep it totally simple, and we're just going to add parts to this craft until those two things are true here. Right now, you can see it's only calculating the top. If I put an engine on here, let me try a 909. If I put an engine on here, you can see that now I've got two stages. If you're not completely in on stages, the staging is the separations of the rocket, right? I was just talking about the stack decoupler. Basically, this engine will fire using this fuel. When it's consumed this fuel and I press spacebar to go to the next stage, it'll blow this stage away. We'll just continue flying this piece, and now this engine will use this fuel. That is how it's... Kerbal Engineer over here shows you the delta V and thrust to weight of each stage. Basically, while this engine is firing using this fuel, I'm going to have a 1.07 thrust to weight and 2,000 meters per second of delta V. If I stage... and this is going on when this engine is firing using this fuel, this stage has gone away, I'm going to have 1119 delta V. So that's how the staging works, and that's what I'm seeing over here in Kerbal Engineer. When I say I want a 1.5 thrust to weight and 1000 delta V, that's what I mean. So let's do this. This, more delta V than I need, not enough thrust to weight. I want 1.5. So let's get rid of that, and let's get an engine. Remember, in order to get a higher thrust to weight, this guy has a max thrust of 50. I want a higher thrust to weight. That means I need an engine that has more thrust. So I am going to go with this. This one again has 200 instead of 50. It's almost like we're missing a middle ground here, really. But this engine has 200 instead of 50. Let's put that one on. Now we can see that that has a thrust to weight of 3.53 and 1544. That's not really that bad. That is definitely more than 1.5, and you know something? I'm going to go with it, and then I'm going to come back here and show you what you can do to change that around. I can change this thrust to weight. Let's go. This is going to be our orbital insertion stage. And then last, we are going to get another... There are some topics I'm going to circle back to here. Last but not least, we're going to have our lifter stage. I put another decoupler, arrow pointing up, arrow pointing to space, really. Let's go get some more fuel. For my lifter stage, I need about 2500 delta V and at least a 1.7 thrust to weight. So let's go ahead and toss some fuel on here. Where's my big fuel tank? There we go. I'm going to toss some fuel in there. It doesn't do anything until I put an engine down, right? So let's go and see what this engine is going to do. That gives us a 1.7 thrust to weight, but not enough delta V. So why? I mean, geez, Dos, you said 1500 delta V and 2500 delta V. I think I'm going to go with 1500. I say 1000 usually, but 1500 will work for this. We've got 1500 delta V in the bottom, 1500 delta V in the basically in the lifter and the kicker here for a total of 3000. In order to get to orbit, I need this number right here to say 4000. But wait, dang it, Das, dude, what the heck? It's 4500 meters per second of delta V to get into Kerbal orbit. Everybody knows that, you idiot. True, but remember, as this rocket flies, it's going to be going hopefully up this in towards space sort of deal. As it flies, it's going to be going up. As it's going up, it's going to be clawing its way out of the atmosphere. As it claws its way out of the atmosphere is going to get less dense. As the atmosphere gets less dense, the fuel is going to be used more efficiently. Remember we talked about ISP. And when the fuel is used more efficiently... Am I an idiot? Oh, I'm totally an idiot. As the fuel is used more efficiently, we are going to get more delta V out of it. I just borked something! And I knew what I did, and then I clicked to confirm it. You probably just saw what I did. Very important concept here, right? When we design this rocket, Kerbal Engineer has two settings. It has atmosphere, and it has vacuum. You may have seen... That was two. You may have seen me switch before. Maybe some of the red stuff in the chat is actually that. I click compact to expand Kerbal Engineer. Right now, this atmospheric button is not... I apparently was playing around. It is not highlighted. That means that all of the numbers that it's giving me here are in vacuum. Lifter stage, she ain't going to be firing in vacuum. She's going to be firing in atmosphere. So I need to click that button. And you can actually see what happens. Watch the ISP here. It's like, hey, when you're not in atmosphere, that top stage is going to be 390 ISP, and these bottom stages are going to be 370. That matches up with highlighting the engines. See the vacuum ISL right there is 390. That's what it's calculating it by. And this guy here, the vacuum ISL, the ISP, sorry, is 370. That's what Engineer is using. However, when I click the atmosphere button, that starts to use the ASL, the at sea level abbreviation there. 300, you can see it right there, and for the other engine, 320, you can see it right there, right? So I screwed up. I was designing this rocket, and I had it in non-atmospheric mode. That's not going to represent reality. When we get to the launch pad, as it turns out, there's going to be atmosphere. So I have to make sure that Kerbal Engineer is in atmospheric mode with that down like that before I worry about this rocket. So back to the drawing board, basically. Not really, because this stage here is still okay. It's 3.53 thrust to weight, and it is that much. Let's go make it. Let's step back just a little bit because I screwed up a little bit. Let me see here. What is going on here? Jeez, I'm gonna see if I got any questions here. How much money did I earn on Twitch? Not much, Cordy Bo. I just got started. Whoa there, flashback. I am nothing without there. Okay, that's when I was saying that. Cool. Tweak scale, you can make the decoupler bigger. Caboose, I'm all stock. I want to keep it easy for, well, I'm mostly stock. Cover space junk prevention. Cardinal, 817. How's it going? Thanks for the shout out. Matrix Iran, I will get to space junk prevention whenever I get this thing into orbit, and I'll explain what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Tweak skill is really cheating career. Nice. Luis Paliotto, what's going on? Space, nice, Mega Maid. Bro Sidon also. With the Sear Happy, nice. Let's see here. Wallpaper. That's pretty cool. On the moon. On what moon? Cardinal, on the moon. Is it because I've got more Kethane coming in behind us? Maybe I can kick that right quick. Dosh streams on the weekend. How am I supposed to get the house painted? Handman. Handman, we're doing a special thing for anybody that just came in. We're doing Kerbal Boot Camp. We're basically doing Kerbal Space Program 0 to 60. I've never flied a rocket before. I have no clue. All I do is headshots in Call of Duty, all the way up to check me out. I'm totally a rocket scientist, and I landed on the moon. That's the goal for this multi-hour stream tonight. It's basically a lot of Academy sessions in one big thing, one big stream. And you don't get anything done. Nice. Do a water jet. Get a Kickstarter to get somebody to paint your house. Oh my gosh, 120 grams of C4 inside of gallons of paint. That's awesome, Luis. So no questions in chat. We're just hanging out. That's cool. I was talking about the kicker stage before I screwed up my Kerbal Engineer there. So let's go back to the kicker stage. This engine can carry a lot more. I want this Delta V to weigh more. That's not right. I want this Delta V to be higher. I want it to be 1500. And that means that I need to add more fuel to it. So watch what happens here. This is a really important concept to get, right? This thrust to weight can't be under 1.5. That's my rule. That makes it easy to go to space, and it's a really easy number to remember. 1500, 1.5. I've got extra thrusts here. That means that I can add more weight, and if I add more weight, it'll lower the thrust to weight, right? So let's go over here, take that guy off. Let's grab some more fuel like that and like that. That gives us 1792 with a lower thrust to weight. That's actually more fuel than I wanted. So let's do a drum tank. This looks like the little drummer boy's tank. That's why I call it that. 3.22. So you saw the difference, right? 3.22, 1576. Take that fuel tank off. 1336, 3.53. So I traded thrust to weight for additional fuel, which means additional delta V. That's a really important concept to get. Since I'm going for 1500 meters per second, I'm just going to go with that, 1500 meters per second. That should be good to go for the kicker. That thrust to weight's way high, and you'll see me fix it in a little bit. Let's go with the lifter stage. Remember, third stage is the lifter. Put in a decoupler. I need this stage to be about 2500. The important thing is that this number plus this number equals 4000, which Kerbal Engineer will add up for you right here. And this one, 1.65. So what did I just say, right? I want 1.7, and I want 2500 delta V. 1.65 on the pad? What's going to happen if I add more fuel? It's not going to work. because while this will give me more delta V, up to 2,000 delta V, 1.21 on the pad, that's no bueno. Could we get to space, maybe? I could design a rocket that has 1.01 on the pad. I could design a rocket that has 0.5 on the pad, and I could still get to space. It's just that the first freaking 5 minutes of the launch would be me sitting on the launch pad, not going anywhere, burning fuel until I get over thrust to weight. TWR of 1.0, thrust to weight of 1.0. Maybe that's something to explain. I say 1.7. That's just my rule of thumb. That's about what you want. It's a global number. It's what you want on the pad. 1.0 on Kerbal means that my thrust from my my thrust from my rocket is going to exactly Screet! Dr. Pepper time. Hang on. The thrust from my rocket, when thrust to weight is 1.0, that means that the thrust coming out the bottom of my rocket is going to exactly counteract the pull of Kerbal's gravity. So if my thrust to weight is 1.0, I'm not going to go anywhere. I could actually, you know something? It may be good to demonstrate that on the pad, just to go launch some rockets. Let me save that. Let me do a new one. I'm going to design a ship that has a thrust to weight of 1.0. Let's do this, and then let's do this. Alrighty. And let's actually, let's use a skipper, which will give us a lot more than 1.0. But we're going to illustrate this. I want to do like a visual aid sort of thing here. 4.11. Alright. That's okay. So let's go and let's see here. Another cool thing about the parts, if I right-click on my engine, I've got a thrust limiter. Look at what that does. I can actually limit this engine to 50% thrust, which means if the engine, the skipper, puts out 650 and I thrust limit it to 51, it's basically a throttle setting, right? I can throttle this engine to 51%, and that's like having the throttle always set at 51. It'll only put out half of that, 325 instead of 650. So, as I do this thrust limiter, look at how I can change the thrust to weight, right? So let's get a couple things here. Thrust to weight of 1.0, there we go, is 24. Write these things down right quick. 24 equals 1.0. Let me do something that's lower, like 10 for the thrust limiter. There we go. 10 is 0.43. So 10 equals 0.43. And then let's do something that's 1.7. And I'm just increasing the thrust limiter here. This is basically a throttle setting, right? Increase it up to there. 1.71 is 41.5. Alright, so 41.5 equals 1.7. Let's take this out to the pad and let's explain why this thrust to weight of 1.7 is so important on the pad. Launch it. I totally made this up. I think it's a good demonstrate. Ion engines. Jeez. Alright, I'm going to come back to the chat here just in a second. So remember, I'm demonstrating the concept of thrust to weight. Basically, the current setting for this engine gives me a 1.7 thrust to weight. I can, what was the lowest? 10. So let's set the thrust limiter on the engine down to 10. And you can actually see Delicious Engineer tells us that our thrust to weight is 0.4. It's the max we can get right now. What are you doing? Why are you wobbling like that? That's very confusing. Oh well, whatever. Right now, at full throttle, our thrust to weight is going to be 0.4. What does that mean? That means when I launch this craft, she ain't going anywhere. Because she's only got 0.4, this craft cannot take off. However, as we burn the fuel, what happens? We get rid of the fuel, we throw it out the back, rocket gets lighter. As the rocket gets lighter, the thrust to weight improves. You can see the thrust to weight slowly but surely going up. I'm not going to sit here and wait for this long. But if we sat here on the pad for long enough, we would burn enough fuel that this craft would get to 1.0. What would happen when it gets to 1.0? Let's find out. Turn off the engines. Come over here, set the thrust limiter to 24. There we go, 24. This is, you can see, 1.033. What's going to happen when I light this engine? Let's throttle up. And you can see I am at full throttle and I can barely lift up. That's because this thrust to weight is just a little bit more than 1.0. Let's take it back down to the pad. Let's see here. Revert to launch. I'm going to set it at like, just to illustrate what's going on here, I'm going to set it at like 0.95 or something, right? We'll give her a thrust weight of 0.95. So again, I'm just changing this. Where is 0.94? 0.96. Let's go with 0.94. 0.92. Oops. 0.95 is pretty close. So right now, thrust to weight 0.95. Whenever I throttle this engine up and light it, I'm not going to take off. But watch what's happening. The thrust to weight is increasing because our mass is going down, right? We're taking fuel, we're tossing it out the back. We don't have to carry that weight anymore. The thrust to weight's increasing, and watch what happens whenever the thrust to weight passes 1.0. I've got it set right like this on the rocket so you can see exactly what happens. Right when we get to 1.0, what do? We start to take off. And as we burn more and more weight, we're going to be going faster and faster. In fact, if I sit here for long enough, I'm going to burn so much weight that my thrust to weight will get up to whatever the maximum will be. That'll be a lot higher than 1.0, 0.49, whatever. So the last thing, 1.7. We like 1.7, right? Let's revert back to the launch and let's cover this in a little bit more detail. I said that you want 1.7. I've already got this craft set with the throttle here. Let's see here, the throttle to 41.5%, which is 1.7. Let's launch this craft with 1.7 and see how she flies. So throttle all the way up, light it. That's what a launch is supposed to look like. 1.7 taking off from the pad. We've got 2,000. We're going to get really high with this rocket. I won't spend the time to do it. But if I'm 1.7 on the pad, that helps me out with some of my checkpoints that I'll go over when we do our first launch. Concept of thrust to weight, does that make sense? I mean, the more thrust you have versus the weight, the faster you'll take off. If you don't have at least 1.0 on the surface of the planet, you won't take off. If you sit there on the pad when you're under 1.0 and you burn, you'll get lighter and you may get above 1.0, so you will be able to eventually take off. Those are all the important things about thrust to weight and why I want 1.7. So let's go back to... Actually, you know, there's one more thing we can do here. Let's unthrottle this engine completely, right? And when I unthrottle the engine completely, let us see what sort of thrust to weight we get. 100% throttle, 4.1. Let's throttle it all the way up, and let's light this candle. That looks really cool, but it's not a very efficient launch. And I'll go over why in just a second. So that's what a 4.5 thrust to weight looks like. It's just going way too fast. It means we're going to waste a lot of delta V because I'm fighting the atmosphere too much. I'll cover that in detail in just a bit. Let's go back to the VAB. And let me look at chat. I saw quite a bit of stuff. Let's see here, coming up. There's some stuff. Dude, Sword, what's going on? Moon is definitely higher than Minimus Muga. You went from, Brain Fried went from not being able to get into space yesterday to crashing into the moon today. Dude, that's awesome. Kept the tips and built a bunch of sweet lifters. You goofed and didn't you put enough fuel on the lander? Oh! We'll totally get it done. Dude, Brosidon, I'm doing the wrong chat again. I need to get better at that. I need to scroll this chat, not the one that's actually through. Brosidon says, where was it? Das, can I just say Kerbal Academy has helped me more than I care to admit. Dude, that's freaking awesome. I really appreciate stuff like that. And Snuggly Squid with the kept my tips from last night in mind and built a bunch of sweet lifters. That's so freaking cool, man. I love for people to come back into the Academy channel over here. Is it full? Am I full Kethane mode now? Sort of deal. I'll go fix it. Oh my gosh, Brosidon and Snuggly Squid, man, both in Brain Fried as well. I appreciate everybody putting the feedback in. It makes me feel good. It makes me want to do this more. I hope that I'm able to pay my bills and stuff doing this sort of stuff, doing the Academy streams. I would really love to do this a lot, spend a lot of time on it. So I appreciate all the support, both in terms of comments in the chat. I get messages all the time. I mean, it's totally cool to see stuff. It makes me feel good. And I appreciate the donation support as well. I mean, everybody that just supports the stream, the Academy, in all the different ways they do it are so freaking cool. Beep! I'm emotional about it. Let's see here. Moon is higher. Sword, welcome. Bam, because nobody lands on the moon first try. Probably. You know something? I wouldn't doubt that. Going 4,000 meters per second. That's what we call a suicide burn. I can cover that sometimes. Let's see here. Got Jeb stuck around Eve. Rescue missions! It should be Kerbal Rescue Mission Simulator sometimes. Zool, what's going on, Zool? How's it going? K9 came in as well, dude. What's going on, K9? Correct. Landing ion engines. Okay. I can come back to ion engines. Dancing rocket. Brosidon says the rocket's twerking. Keithane is slowly but surely filling my room. I'll fix it as soon as I'm done getting caught up with chat here. Playing science mode. Feels really limiting. Science mode with B9. Cool. How to make things cheap. Find the journey. You prefer career mode. Okay, cool. My green screen, it's the... I've got such good natural light in this room, which is apparently bad. Broadcasting straight to you from a room filled with Keithane. Rescue scenario question. Sword, I will totally answer a question. Let me fix my Keithane. You have about half the amount of viewers as KSP TV right now. Dude, that's cool. My room is slowly but surely filling with Keithane. Oh my gosh, I really need to go to a blank screen to fix this. Just 1 second, y'all. I need a screen that's black. Space. Do I have anything in orbit in the save? I don't yet. So let me do that, I think. Yeah, alright. Check out the Keithane behind me. Let me fix it, y'all. I don't have a recording studio. I do this from my bedroom. I actually rearranged my bedroom just so that I could have more room for my green screen to fit. I ain't embarrassed about that. Now the green screen has been retweaked to work with to work with the current lighting level in my well natural lit bedroom. Now we're good to go. Let me turn that up. Thanks for letting me know, by the way. The underside of my hat is apparently not lit correctly, but we'll be fine with that. We're much better than we were. Thanks for letting me know that I was dying of Keithane inhalation. What did I miss? Liam, wait, did you say something? You were playing Cinder. Oh, Slender, and it showed up when you died. Nice. I was fixing my green screen. T-Game! Yeah, we're doing Kerbal Boot Camp, man. We're doing Kerbal Boot Camp. Flynn, Flixenrone. Welcome to Kerbal Boot Camp / Kerbal Space Academy. You are welcome here anytime. We are covering basic KSP topics. Again, the entire thing is that KSP seems like it's like a really intimidating game, right? It's like, gosh, it's so hard. It's not that hard. In fact, I really almost think that maybe I shouldn't go into so much detail for this first thing. I should just go into, here's how we get to rocket in 3 numbers you need to know. But let's get back to building our rocket. We talked about thrust to weight. We talked about engines and ISP. We talked about a bunch of basic things. I think in the future I'm going to go over building the design before I really go into depth on those things. Note to self. Again, I'm doing this live. The script is made up and the points don't matter. So that is what I will do in the future. Let's go back to our little lifter. The intro to space. Load. Alright. Here we go, and we were talking about thrust to weight, and I was explaining why I need 1.7 on the launch pad, right? So let's put this LTV-45 engine on there. 1.65 on the launch pad. Again, I was trying to get this number plus this number to equal 4,000. It's not right now. This stage plus this stage equals 2801. Let's see what we can do. One thing... I can't add more fuel because that'll make my thrust to weight go down, remember? Let's see here. I need to add more thrust. Do I have any engines that give me more thrust? I could put more engines on the side. In fact, let's do that. Let's assume you don't have radial decouplers yet. Let's grab that, and let's put 2 more engines on the side like that. That's actually really good. Now we're at 2,000, and we're at 3,703 total. So we need to get this to 2,500. That means that each of these guys can carry more fuel. So let's put more fuel on them. I'm trying to keep it super simple here. That's 2.2 at 2,400. This rocket right here would go to space. It will definitely go to space. Let's put... No, you know something? Let's go with this. Look. Could I launch the rocket right now and go to space? Yes, I can. In fact, let's do that. Let's get to some freaking rocket launches instead of some DOS sitting here talking. This rocket right here will go to space. I've got the payload. Do a final check. I've got the payload. I've got a chute for my payload. I've got power generation. And I've got an engine. I've got fuel for the payload. And I've got a place for Jeb to sit. Done. Kicker. There's my kicker stage. Thrust to weight over 1.5, delta V 1500. Check. That's what we want. Lifter stage. Thrust to weight over 1.7, delta V about 2500. Check. We can get that to space. In fact, I will actually put 2500 on it. There we go. What is that beeping for? There we go. So now 2500 delta V over 1.7 on the pad. This is looking really good. Again, that stage was checked. 1.5, 1500, over 1.7, 2500. This rocket right here will go to space. Last thing, let's check the staging. We talked about staging earlier where we have this and we have this and it separates out the stages. Basically, these engines down here are going to fire using this fuel. When we stage, it's going to kick that out. This engine is going to start firing. See, that's totally an engine. This engine is going to start firing using this fuel. When that one's empty, kick that out. This engine is going to start firing using that fuel. That's our stages over here. The important thing is we want to make sure the stages are correct. So at launch, we usually just have engines. Those look good. Then when we press spacebar for the first time, that's going to happen. It's going to kick that guy out. What I really want to do is drag him and put him there with that engine. So putting him there with that engine, now when I press spacebar for the first time, this decoupler, you can see when I go there, it's actually going to highlight it up there. That decoupler is going to fire, and when that decoupler fires, it actually will kick the stage off. Oops, kick that stage off like that, and then this engine will light. So at the same spacebar press, that decoupler fires, that engine lights, good deal. At the next spacebar fire, that decoupler, see it highlighted in green, is going to fire, and that engine is going to turn on. That's good. So our staging here is good. First spacebar, lights the main engines, takes us off. Second spacebar, ditches the lifter, activates the kicker. Third spacebar, ditches the kicker, activates the payload. That's what we want. Let's launch this puppy. Save, launch, chat, Dr. Pepper. Good lord, T-game. That's a lot. Welcome to Whose Rocket Is It Anyways, where the delta V is made up and the thrust to weight doesn't matter. Actually, I can't say that because the delta V is not made up, it's calculated, and the thrust to weight is very important. So we can't say that the delta V is made up and the thrust to weight doesn't matter. Yes, let's see here. There you go. Alright, good to go. I don't think I really missed anything in chat. It's not Muga. It's 4,000 in Engineer. It's 4,000 in Engineer because this is at sea level, and as we go up, we'll illustrate it right here as I launch this. It is 4,500 actual delta V, but this is engineer readout delta V. It needs to say 4,000. 4,000, and I will illustrate what's going on there. Sithly. Brain Fried does, you can totally toss question in there so I see it next time. I don't need the launch clamps. You may have seen the launch clamps, the red things that attach to the side. I don't have to have them. The rocket will balance. The smaller rocket like this will balance. When you get into bigger, more complex rockets, you do need that. But the smaller rockets, you don't really need the launch clamps for. You can put them on there. They do look cool. Let's see here. Anything else? I think I'm good to go 3 sats. Not enough. 40 GM, what was the last thing you said? Yeah. Okay, I don't think that was for me. Stronger dishes, yeah. You're about to, Hitman. You're orbiting the sun whenever you're sitting on the surface of Kerbal. So, yes, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Let's go ahead and launch this rocket. And let me show. We actually have more than 4,500 delta V on this rocket. We've got 50,000. We've got 5,000 total because of the payload, but 25 plus 15. Watch what happens. Remember my things. Throttle up. SAS engage. Panel lock. Let's go to space by har har har. Pressing space. That 2.078 is not good. So let's go ahead and click space and just see what happens. 2.7, we took off way too fast. Remember 2.7 or 2.1, 2.0 was higher than 1.7, so that means we took off faster than we needed. We can get to space because our total was 5,000, but we may need to use some of the fuel out of the lifter. Remember my first checkpoint. My first checkpoint is 5,000 meters going 150 meters per second. Write that down. It's like 2 numbers. 5,000, 150. I could totally do that. There's another note card. We're going to get to 5,000 really fast. And the problem is, I'm going a whole heck of a lot faster than 150. That's because my thrust to weight was a lot higher than 1.7 on the pad. So at 5,000, I was actually going 195. That's too fast. Next checkpoint, 10,000, going 260. That ain't going to work either. Look at this. We're at 7,000. We're already going 245. We're going way too fast, and that's because that 1.7 was not 1.7 on the pad. It was 2.0. So let's see how bad we're doing. 10,000 meters. We're going 330. That's not great. Next checkpoint, start your gravity turn. Lean over to the side about 45 degrees. Right here, if you point at the 90, don't get confused. This is 90 heading 45 degree angle relative to the horizon. So we're doing that. And did you see what happened here? On the pad, that was actually 1,500. Now it's 1,800. On the pad, this was 900. Now it's 1,115. Remember, that's because we clawed our way out of the gravity well, out of the atmosphere. There's 50. Next checkpoint, I got a 50 apoaps. There, that blew off. Let's go with our kicker stage. I press stage to stage it, and now I'm going to turn and burn towards the horizon until I get an apoaps right here in Engineer. Again, you can also press this and hover over that, but it's better just to watch it in Engineer. Get Engineer. Until I have an apoaps, I'm going to go for 75. So there is an apoaps of 75 and change. Let's go out here and plan our circularization burn. Click on this, click Add Maneuver, make it so you can see the whole planet, and drag the green circle to the right until I get a little periaps tag. Boop, there's a periaps tag. 46, and just keep on dragging that until the periaps tag comes to this side. 74, 80, good enough for government work. I'll show you how to tweak that. Here's another interesting thing that you can look at. 940 meters per second is how much burn we're going to need to get into orbit. We've got 1146 in the tank, so we are going to be able to circularize our orbit using the kicker stage, the orbital insertion stage, and we will have a little bit of fuel left over, not very much though. So let's do that. Last thing to know, the burn here is 25 seconds. I split my burns in half. I want half of the burn before the node and half of the burn after the node. So round it up to 26 and half it 13. When this reads T-minus 50, when it reads T-minus 13 seconds, that's when I want to burn at this blue marker right here. So let's go ahead and time warp. Get on down to 13 seconds. There we go. We can chat for 7 seconds. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. Light that engine. Go ahead and do that burn. This is going down. It's using fuel out of the tank. But we are going, you can see what's happening, right? As we give ourselves more orbital velocity, we start to miss the planet even more. In fact, we get further along the planet. The goal is to be going so fast that we fall towards the planet, but we're really bad and we miss it. So right there we missed it. Right there's our burn. 81 by 75. Good enough. And here we have the rocket in orbit. I think that Muga made a good point. I am pretty experienced. I have a ton of headroom in this design because my payload had all this delta V as well. So I had, 1,300 meters per second of wiggle room. But I will admit that I'm good at flying the rocket. I know what to do. I'm not having to think about it and that sort of stuff. It's all second nature to me. And Muga came up with an excellent point. If you're not as experienced flying the rocket, you can put more and more fuel on it. There's nothing wrong with getting to space using extra or having fuel left over. So let's follow Muga's suggestion there. Let's go on back to the VAB. Thoop. And let's put more delta V on there. Let's overbuild this thing. In fact, until you get more experienced, you may want to have this number equal 4,500 in the engineer in atmospheric mode. Because I do agree, sometimes I fly these rockets so often, I'm like, wow, it's so easy. Let me do that right quick. So we've already got more thrust to weight than we need right here. We can put more fuel in here. Let's actually make this number as high as we can with the 1.7 thrust to weight. I'm going to come back over here. Could I just do this? Actually, we could just do it this way. Let's see here. I'm trying to keep it even. Let's try these engines. Sorry, these fuel tanks. And you know about the fuel tanks. There are different sizes. The bigger a tank is, the more fuel it holds. The smaller a tank is, the less fuel it holds, roughly. Sort of deal. That's 1.93. What if I add 2 more? That's incorrect. That's 1.69 with 3,000. So look at that. This is a good rocket. If you're new to Kerbal Space Program, you want to practice getting into orbit, this right here, save it. Intro to Space, Rocket 1. Save it. The Intro to Space Rocket 1, this is a good rocket for you to start with. Don't let Sneaky Ninja Jeb, he always gets in the rocket. You use 45, yeah, dude. TGYame 4500 Delta V in Atmo mode. That is a good thing to go for. 4600, we've got, you'll definitely have lots of overhead. When you get into bigger and bigger rockets, you can get a little bit closer. When you get more experience, you can get a little bit closer. If this number says 4000 and you're experienced, you can get to space. If it says 4500 and you're not as experienced, you should be able to get to space as well. So, let me do this, y'all. I need to take a break for just 2 minutes.